Hey everybody, this is Ryan Deal with 605 Sports, joined again by John Akre with 605 Sports here to talk some high school football playoffs. We had the first round last week for the 11B and 9-man ranks, and then this week we're gonna the big classes will kick off their playoffs, and the other classes will continue their playoffs as well with the quarterfinals. So, going to break down all seven of the classes and talk about some matchups to be on the lookout for and everything. And we're going to start at the top with 11 AAA. And John, it just feels like in 11 AAA, Lincoln, Brandon Valley met last year in the state championship. Lincoln coming out on top in that one, winning their second state championship in a row. Those two teams kind of feel like they've kind of separated themselves a little bit from the pack in that class. But in that class, you can just never count out some other teams because they're all so familiar with each other. What kind of stands out to you in 11 AAA?
Well, like you said too, it's like the vast majority of the season, Brandon Valley and Lincoln, they just kind of seem like the top two teams in AAA. But then Brandon Valley just this past week they took a loss to Jefferson. So I think this quarterfinal round can maybe show a little bit from those teams that are sort of just sitting behind them and hoping to maybe make a statement here in the quarterfinals and semis next week.
Yep, absolutely. I guess is there a first round game in 11 AAA that really stands out to you?
Yeah, the 4 versus 5. I think that one's kind of been an interesting one to follow with O'Gorman and Harrisburg. I mean, this goes all the way back to August now when these two teams faced off in that opening week of the season. O'Gorman took that one 25-24, and they scored a go-ahead touchdown with just 90 seconds left. So I think that's going to be an interesting rematch to see. And then obviously, the winner of that one will head to Brandon and take on Brandon Valley. So it'll be an interesting matchup to see who comes out on top with that one and potentially take a crack at Brandon Valley next week if they can defeat Roosevelt.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's just that class is always intriguing just because they know each other so well. The familiarity is always adds an extra layer of intrigue and everything. So that'll be fun to see how that shakes out. And speaking of a class that the teams know each other is 11 AA. We were kind of joking recently. Just feels like you just draw a name out of a hat with this class. Recent years, Pierre's been just kind of a notch or two above some of their teams in that class. Just went on a great run, and now they've fallen back to the pack a little bit, and everybody's just kind of we don't really know who's going to come out this year in this class and everything. Who's going to meet at the Dome? What really stands out to you in 11 AA?
Well, it's kind of similar with AAA to an extent, but like you mentioned, uh, you just don't really know what to make a trip or of double A in a given week. Even last week where you think, okay, we finally maybe got a number one team solidified here and Huron, and then they drop one to Brookings. But like you mentioned, I mean, it's going to be an interesting, next two rounds here to see how it comes out because I think this class epitomizes the any given week mentality with some of these scores that come out.
Yeah. And then you kind of touched on that one matchup there, but in the first round, I guess safe to say Huron and Brookings is that obviously the most intriguing first round matchup for this class.
Yeah, you don't really see a lot of matchups where the top ranked and seed in a class loses in the final week, and then they get matched up with that team that they just lost to. So those two teams are probably sick of watching film on each other by now. But it's again, it's going to be an interesting matchup there in the quarterfinals. A rematch from less than 7 days ago or whatever, 7 days ago now, and this time it is, Huron is hosting, as if that makes any much of a difference. But excited to see how the sequel goes with Brookings and Huron.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll just be fun to see how that class shakes out. You just don't know what's going to happen. 11A, Sioux Falls Christian. Safe to say they've obviously separated themselves from the pack in this class, outscoring their opponents by 33.7 points per game and just winning convincingly. I think their closest game this season was Lennox beat those guys 17-0 in a rematch of last year's state championship. Sioux Falls Christian. This feels like a notch or two above the rest of the field in this one.
Well, yeah, and especially that they figured out their quarterback situation really quickly with Cooper Strandy, the sophomore, who transitioned from a defensive back last year. and he's just got that offense rolling. And then they kind of knew what they had on the defensive side from last year. They didn't lose all that much. And so you combine that offense finally getting things rolling this season with some turnover. Uh, it's a dangerous team. They've shown it all year. It's certainly going to take his best to knock off the Chargers.
Yeah. And it's interesting. They're looking for their first 11A state championship. Their two previous state championship for football were in Class 11B. So, the Chargers are motivated to get that first 11A state championship. And again, with this class, a lot of familiarity. But I guess the one first round matchup we kind of got an eye on. A couple of conference teams have not played each other this season.
Madison and West Central. They're only separated by what, 45 minutes, and they have yet to play each other this season. Especially being DAC 12 conference foes, you'd think they would have had a matchup already, but no, they weren't on their schedule yet. But I think this is another one that should be set up to be a good 4 versus 5 matchup in Madison. West Central, they're 2-2 in their last 2 games, though. They kind of slipped down those rankings a little bit in the last month of the season. So maybe coming with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. And then Madison's obviously got the great quarterback receiver duo with Henry and Shane Veenhoff. And when those two guys are healthy and on the field at the same time, I mean, that's a tough offense to stop. So it'd be interesting to see how that one shapes out.
Yep, absolutely. 11B, again, first round was last week for this class. Top two teams, Elk Point Jefferson, St. Thomas More, continue to roll. When EPJ beat Flandreau, STM beat Hot Springs. Anything kind of stand out to you? The first week of the playoffs for this class.
Well, certainly not with those top 2 teams. You kind of just know what you're going to get with them each and every week with EPJ and STM. The 2 teams that I kind of really wanted to highlight are kind of going under the radar a little bit is those Northeastern Clark-Willow Lake and Dual. They've had just excellent seasons. Clark-Willow Lake's only loss is an early season loss to Sioux Valley, which, they eventually avenged, just 2 weeks later. Dual's only loss is to Clark-Willow Lake, and now they're both the 3 and the 4 seed in the playoffs. I think those 2 teams could really make some noise, especially if they can get past their matchups this week, and maybe a little bit surprising teams as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess a first round game to kind of keep an eye, or excuse me, a second round game to keep an eye on in 11B is Mount Vernon Plankinton going out and playing St. Thomas More to be the second time that these teams have played this year, and it's kind of interesting. This will be the fourth matchup between these two programs within the last 2 years. Met in the first round, or met in the playoffs, last year, and then they played in the regular season last year as well. So it's kind of interesting. These two teams have kind of gotten really acquainted with each other on the gridiron and everything. And MVP, I don't know if there's a team out there that's playing with as much confidence, momentum as those guys. Picked up a nice win to end the regular season. Beat a good Mulbridge Pollock team last week. So the Titans, they're really rolling right now. So, but certainly a tough task going out and playing the Cavaliers out in St. Thomas More and everything. 9AA. Let's get to the 9-man ranks. Freeman Marion, Freeman Academy, and Elkton Lake Benton. Like we talked recently, I said sign me up for the rematch. At the Dome and everything, and they picked up some wins in the first round. 9AA kind of still feels like those 2 teams are kind of on a collision course, but I guess we got to talk about Hanson. What'd you see from the Beavers in the first round?
I thought that was just an impressive performance from Hanson there, coming off a loss to Viborg Hurley just a few weeks prior, and then they go in and take down Viborg Hurley, the one of 2 upsets in the 9AA playoffs. Obviously, the make what you want of an 8 versus 9 upset, but yeah, I mean, just it's one of those programs that it's kind of like a Howard almost in a winner where it doesn't really matter what their record is. It's just a team you don't really want to see in the playoffs. So impressive win out of them, and now they get another tough test on the road against Elkton Lake Benton next week,
Yeah,
or this week, I should say.
seems like there's always in these playoffs, there's always a team that picks up a nice win on the road in the first round and see if they can keep it going. Sometimes there's always a team kind of road warriors, and let's see if this year if it's going to be the Hanson Beavers. What's a matchup to kind of keep an eye out for in 9AA for the second round?
Well, it's a matchup that was almost played 6 hours from where it's going to be played. If you recall that seed point sort of switch around there a few days after the brackets came out, Hamlin and Hill City. Hamlin now has to go out west and take their title defense on the road to Hill City there. That I mean, you kind of know what you're going to get with the Chargers as well. It's just a program that they've been building for a long time now. And obviously they still have uh, Jackson Wadsworth, just outstanding quarterback for them. And I mean, they had a lot of turnover from last season, but I don't get it twisted. Seeing them against Elk Lake Benton, even with that score being as wide of a margin as it was, Hamlet can still move the football and they can still pass the ball very effectively. Uh, and it's kind of one of those tough aspects in nine-man football is defending the pass, just because there's just so much more space that needs to be covered on the field. So Hamlin's always a tough team, and Hill City's also been sort of a rising program in 9AA as well. So I think it should be a good matchup.
Yeah, East versus West. Anytime we get an East River West River matchup, that's always fun to see how those teams stack up against each other. 9A, pretty chalk. It kind of seemed like in the first round, and everything with all the top seeds winning and everything. Wall and Warner, like we talked, kind of risen to the top in that class and everything. But I think there's some intrigue that could be looming in here in the quarterfinals. How do you kind of see these quarterfinals setting up?
Well, I think we've talked before. I think 9A, the quarterfinals, just all four matchups. I think this class has the most intriguing quarterfinal matchups, top to bottom. I could very well see any of these four matchups ending in an upset tomorrow night. Um, I just think it's one of those classes that just sort of ended up as a very sort of heavy top eight seeds. I mean, Castlewood's an eight seed and they went 7-1 in the regular season. That just kind of shows the strength of this class overall. Um, and like I said, I just think this class, you really want to keep an eye on these scores because they could be really interesting tomorrow.
Yeah, and we were talking just a little bit ago. You can make the argument all four of these matchups, like you were just saying. Obviously, a lot of intrigue. It was tough for us to kind of pinpoint a first round match, or excuse me, a second round matchup that we're really looking forward to, I guess. But what's one that you really have highlighted, I guess?
Well, I think I mean maybe the shortest trip in the 9A quarterfinals. Alcester Hudson hosting Platte Geddes. What is that, like 2 hours away? That's the shortest trip out of any of the four quarterfinals in that class. But I think that one's the most intriguing one to me because you've got Alcester Hudson that kind of was under the radar before the season started, and then they come out week one and take down Howard 40-29. So the with their quarterback Tommy Walth, who is just a unit. He's a threat to pass, and he's a big boy to bring down. And then obviously Darren Dykstra, they run sort of more of a spread offense, which can cause some problems for defenses. And then obviously with Platte Geddes, that's another staple program in nine-man football. They won two titles here pretty recently in the past 4 or 5 years. Kenyon Kuiper and Jai Bailey have kind of been pacing that offense as well. So that'll be an interesting game to watch out for.
Yep. All right. Let's cap it off with 9B. The Rapid St. Mary's Avon again, kind of risen to the top here. 9B. Anything really jump out to you or stand out to you as we shift towards the quarters?
Well, and I think I made a touch on it last week where I've seen St. Mary's play now 3 times, I think. I'm not sure other than the Alcester Hudson game where they won 34-20. I mean, they've looked like a machine. Just drive in and drive out. It looks like every single player is just dominant for them, and it shows in the scorebook or the scoreboard. Last week, putting up 72 on Irene Makonda, and obviously Avon. That's another team that's trying to get back to the dome. Both teams are, with St. Mary's reaching in 2021, Avon in 23. Um, it's kind of similar vibes with them and 9AA, where you just kind of think those top two seeds are sort of on a collision course for each other.
Yeah. First round matchup, rematch of last year's state championship, Falkton and Sully Buttes playing in the quarterfinals, played earlier in the season as well. Sully Buttes got up a few touchdowns in that one. Falkton came back, made it interesting, but ultimately in the end, Sully Buttes scored a late touchdown to end up winning 30 to 22. Falkton wants another crack at those guys, and obviously Sully Buttes wants to play Falkton again. They've kind of created a nice little rivalry, fun little rivalry here the last several years and everything. So that's certainly a 9B matchup we have to keep an eye on here in the quarterfinals and everything. All right, I think we touched on all the classes and everything, and some intriguing matchups and whatnot. And we should also mention that people can make their picks for the 605 Sports Pick'em Challenge, all 7 classes, and the All Nations 2 classes as well. People can submit their picks before the quarterfinals kick off tomorrow and everything. So make sure you make those picks for a chance to try to beat me and John, the experts, at picking this stuff and everything. So, all righty, John, this is fun again, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good.